Hello there. Welcome into a Monday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, which is free to download and free to use, is sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, leading you right into a Monday Night Football doubleheader, starting with the Bucs and the Lions at 5, Seahawks, Texans, the late game. So that gives us 2 hours, plenty of time to accomplish what we set out to accomplish today. If you'd like to give your thoughts, 719-247-1313. You could call or text into the show, or you can always hit me up on Twitter at Gingerly Tweets. Anybody else starting to get like Tebow time vibes right now from this Broncos team? I mean, if we're going to make a comparison with a Broncos team of yesteryear, I feel like that would probably be the best comp. Tebow time. And that's the thing about Tebow time. It was a blast. It was fun. Yesterday was really fun. I mean, not for 3 quarters, but the fourth quarter, it was a lot of fun. And that was the thing. Now, there's another layer onto it and how real it was and what that Broncos team could accomplish. And I think that it compares to the way I feel about this team, but those are tomorrow's problems. Today, it's that game was nuts and it was fun. And what a day to be up at Empower Field and to be a part of that. Again, not for 3 quarters, but the fourth quarter. And look, let's frame our conversation the right way here. The Giants lost that football game yesterday. Right? I mean, come on. Teams just don't lose or teams don't win games down 19-0, looking the way that the Broncos did for 3 quarters. It just doesn't happen. The Giants absolutely lost that football game. You know, the only thing that and we know the Broncos are a team of rhythm, right? Well, the only thing that allowed them to get a rhythm was, at least scoring the football, was a deflection. And look, I know what you're going to say. The Giants right after that had their own deflection that led to a touchdown. Fair enough. But the only thing that got the Broncos started was a deflection that ended up in Troy Franklin's hands. But then you go, but even then, especially because the Giants got their own tip touchdown going on the next thing, the thing that really was the turning point in the game was Jackson Dart's interception. And that was an egregious interception to throw. Right to Justin Stranad. I don't know how he couldn't have caught that ball. But if you're going to lose a game up by as many as the Giants are up to, you got to turn the ball over. If the Giants would have hung on to the football, even if they would have had to punt, they would have taken enough time off that you feel like maybe the Broncos don't come back. So they needed that interception, which was not an especially great play by Justin Stranad, as it was a terrible mistake by a young quarterback in Jackson Dart. And even then, not guaranteed the Broncos end up winning that game. Shane Bowen makes Dexter Lawrence one of the players that constitute maybe the NFL's best front four. decides, I don't need you in this play. You go ahead and sit out. I'm going to drop 8 into coverage on that final drive. I mean, if you want the textbook definition, the embodiment of the saying, prevent defense prevents you from winning, that's it. You can't generate any type of pressure on Bo Nix. And maybe you could have had you had Dexter Lawrence in the game with Carter and Brian Burns. And Brian Burns was livid about it after the game. So you had the Giants, puckering up a little bit and being afraid of what was going to happen. And it became kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that, the Broncos get into field goal range and what happened after Will Lutz gets the field goal for them to cap off the biggest comeback in team history. But none of that would have even been possible. We wouldn't even be talking about this if this fill-in kicker that they had made even one of those 2 extra points that he missed. One, either the one earlier or certainly the one late after Jackson Dart tied up the game or gave the Giants the lead, I should say. One of those extra points goes in, that's a wrap. Broncos, great comeback and all, fall short. So the New York Giants lost that football game. And you may not be on my side, but I have somebody on my side that I think is a very powerful ally. Here's the head coach of the victorious football team from yesterday.
It's important we don't let the euphoria of a win like that cloud the things that need to get cleaned up tomorrow. So they'll enjoy it tonight, but there are a lot of things that we're still doing, particularly offensively, that trouble me. And we'll get it fixed. We have to get it fixed.
They look like over the last 3 weeks, like those Tim Tebow Broncos. Right? Where it's a little fraudulent. It's a little... yesterday the Broncos had no business winning that football game. They had no business winning that game. But yet somehow they did. And you can't quite explain why they did. Even Bo Nix afterwards, time and time again, said, I don't have any answers for you. They don't even know how they were able to win that game, which tells me they didn't win the game. The Giants lost it. Okay? But here's what I will say to Sean Payton's point. Right now, they look like the Tim Tebow Broncos, and you know how that story ended. I think there's reason to believe that the Broncos can be a little bit more real than that team was. Because a lot of the things that are keeping them looking so poor through 3 quarters in the Philadelphia game and then yesterday are mistakes that they're making. It's not always, Bo Nix isn't a good enough quarterback or he doesn't have good enough weapons, right? Again, it's a lot of mistakes and mistakes that are born out in part of Sean Payton constantly reshuffling the deck. Right, with the constant substitution patterns, it's confusing them. It's throwing them off. So I think Sean Payton has a role in all of this. That he needs to look inward and say, am I contributing to all of this? But those Broncos teams with Tebow, they just weren't that talented, especially at the quarterback position. No matter how little you perceive that I think of Bo Nix is much better quarterback than Tim Tebow ever was. And I think a lot of what's keeping the Denver Broncos from putting together a full 4-quarter performance and looking like a real contender instead of just taking 1 quarter of football yesterday, 2 quarters of football against Cincinnati, 1 quarter of football against the Eagles, and kind of piecemealing it together. I think it's a lot of their own doing, a lot of things that you would think for a well-coached team they would be able to iron out. They haven't yet. They haven't yet. So until they do, I feel like the fate of this team is going to be a similar one to that team with Tim Tebow. Right? The magic lasted into the first round of the playoffs with Tim Tebow hitting Demaryius Thomas, and then they went to New England and they got absolutely embarrassed. Like, there is an upper echelon of team in the AFC, and you know the names. Broncos ran into them last year, and it's not going to end well if they continue down this path. But the good news is it's week 7. And you can buy Sean Payne's explanation of the number of self-inflicted wounds that any team worth its salt would be able to remedy at some point. Now, here's the other thing that you have to give the Broncos credit for. This continues to showcase how this team has improved. Still shoot themselves in the foot. I think they're still lacking at the quarterback position. They're lacking at the skill positions. I think they have a coach who overthinks himself a lot. But one thing that the threshold that the Broncos have crossed, and it was that Eagles game, right? They weren't the team making the mistakes in that fourth quarter. When the game was being decided, it was not the Denver Broncos who were making the mistakes. It was Zach Bond having a completely avoidable unnecessary roughness penalty that put the Eagles in a terrible position. Yesterday, it wasn't the Denver Broncos. Through 3 quarters it was, but in the fourth quarter, it wasn't Bo Nix throwing a pick, it was Jackson Dart. It wasn't the Broncos coaches who were making bad decisions, it was the Giants. It wasn't the Broncos special teams that were failing them, it was the Giants. So yes, all of this amounts to the Giants lost that game. The Broncos did not win it. But you can still find an aspect of this team that is different than even it was a few weeks ago, Indianapolis, LA, the games I'm speaking of. The Broncos aren't the team that when the game's on the line in the fourth quarter, in the most important moments, they're not making the mistakes. There was only one that you could argue was a mistake, and that was, of course, Riley Moss with the PI. As hard as I am on Riley Moss, that was not a pass interference. That was not a pass interference penalty. I am on Riley Moss more than anybody. That is not him. That is not a pass interference call. And Sean Payne, you can't go out onto the field, right? And even Sean Payne admitted that after the game. But that shouldn't have been called. Not at that moment, and not that Riley Moss did enough, in my opinion, to get called for PI at any point in the game. So that was maybe the one mistake that the Broncos made, and I don't even think it was on them. I think that was a mistake by the referee that happened to go against Denver. But they were buttoned up. They were buttoned up in that fourth quarter. They didn't go away. And you heard Sean Payne talk about, like, there's a grit there, and that's fine, and that's all well and good. At some point, you have to graduate from the try-hard team that never gives up to being a team that wins football games. Like, the longer this goes on, the more I'm kind of over the Broncos have grit. Okay, they're all millionaires. Like, they should play 48 minutes or 60 minutes, not too much to ask. Stay in it. But yeah, they didn't give up. But even you heard Sean Payton there. That's not even good enough for him. He's like, oh, great. We didn't give up. Okay, that's the minimum requirement of a team that fancies themselves a division winner and a Super Bowl contender. But the credit you give them is they didn't make the mistakes late in the game. The Eagles did. And yesterday, the Giants did. Don't know that you can make any grand proclamations about this Broncos team based on that comeback. But it must have been an amazing 30 minutes being a Broncos fan. I'll take your thoughts on it. 719-24-7, 1313. Of course, that'll be the primary topic of conversation, but there are a couple of other news items over the last 24 hours that I also want to touch on. And I will go to the latest piece of news regarding the Denver Nuggets. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Your latest national keyword for the 5K a day is cent, C-E-N-T. Get it? Because money. Text C-E-N-T to 95819 and you'll be entered to win $1,000, something that we are doing 5 times a day, Monday through Friday. That's why we're calling it the 5K a day here on Extra Sports 1300. You know, there's a running joke among Colorado media that anytime anything good happens to the Rockies, the Nuggets, or the Avalanche, that the Denver Broncos will find a way to kind of get in on that. Right? Nuggets get a big win, and the next day the Broncos are like, we're unveiling alternate uniforms. Or, you know, the Denver Broncos, knowing where they sit in the zeitgeist, will use that to their advantage anytime they feel like one of the other Colorado teams is getting a little bit too much love. Now, today was an important deadline for the Denver Nuggets, so I'm not accusing them of this, but rare is the occasion when a significant piece of Nuggets news comes out on a day where the Broncos are the biggest topic. It's usually the other way around. Nuggets are the biggest topic going into the day. The Broncos go, we're firing our coach. We're inducting in somebody into the Ring of Fame. They're the kid that never likes the other kids getting attention. But today, the Nuggets did a thing that I think even in the midst of all the conversation of that nuts football game we had yesterday is worth talking about. Because today the Denver Nuggets have signed Christian Braun to a 5-year, $125 million extension. And so, like Michael Porter before him, the Denver Nuggets are making a decision to pay a lot of money to a guy who's their 4th most important player, right? This is the same thing that the Nuggets did when they signed Michael Porter. Okay? Here's the difference, and it's a significant difference. Christian Braun is going to average $25 million over the course of the 5 years. He doesn't make $25 million for his salary in a year for at least a couple of years. This year, he's still on his rookie deal. Next year, it'll be 21, and then it will go up from there. Michael Porter, when he signed his deal, was at 30. And by the way, Michael Porter this year will make $38 million. So if I asked you, forgetting about Cam Johnson and all the repercussions of that trade for a moment, would you rather have Michael Porter at 30 plus, almost $40 million, or Christian Braun at an average of 25, but it won't get up to 25 for a few years? And I think you would take Christian Braun at the lower dollar value. Guy that plays both ends of the floor at a cheaper rate than what they paid Michael Porter. But the reality will still hit them all the same. Okay, this year they're paying about $1.5 million in tax. Next year it's going to be closer to 20. Like, this roster, as much as you like it, and you should, it's maybe the best roster top to bottom that the Nuggets have had in a good number of years. But the bill's going to come due here. And what I'm fascinated to see is what other decisions the Nuggets will make between now and then, and how Christian Braun will be perceived. I think what he has going for him is that it's not the dollar amount that they gave to Michael Porter, because you knew what came along with that. What came along with that was Michael Porter became the scapegoat for everything. Because there was a perception that he wasn't worth the money he was getting paid. I think we can make an argument right now that Christian Braun, in NBA parlance, $25 million, that is a role player salary. So I think it's going to take longer, or perhaps some mismanagement of this roster, for Christian Braun to get to the point that Michael Porter was, where everybody's yelling to get this guy out of there. And he's the reason for all that ails the Denver Nuggets, which was never totally fair. But the bill's going to come due. And this depth that you like with the Denver Nuggets, it's going to get sapped. Really what they've done is they've secured their roster basically for 2 years. Now, Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr. are only on 1-year deals. And Peyton Watson is a restricted free agent. And the Nuggets are already set to be well over the tax. So there are going to be some decisions with those 3 guys after this season is over. But Murray, Jokic, Gordon, Brown, Cam Johnson, Jonas Valanciunas, they're all in for the next 2 years. They're going to make a run at the next 2 years, and then there's going to have to be some kind of a reset here. And they're going to maybe lose some guys that contribute to a championship-level team. But this is the same idea that they had when they paid Porter. But the thing that you can say that makes you feel a little bit better about it is that it's at a lower dollar figure, and it's a dollar figure much more commensurate with what Christian Braun is for this team. Which is, they're not the same player, but in terms of role, in terms of importance, Christian Braun, until we really see what Cam Johnson is with this team, basically occupies the same space that Michael Porter did. Now, he's coming off of maybe the best year he's going to have on both ends of the floor. But doesn't mean that there's not more room to grow. What I'm looking at Christian Braun moving forward, because here's what Michael Porter, to his detriment, never did. Michael Porter never evolved, right? Not in a significant way. Michael Porter never improved in a way where you go, okay, maybe this is actually a bargain. The way that Christian Braun can improve to help stay in front of all of this and to make sure that he doesn't become the new Michael Porter, where everyone's looking at his salary saying he's not worth it and the Nuggets aren't making moves, so therefore it's Christian Braun's contract that's limiting them. Can Christian Braun become a high-level defender? I mean, you look at the numbers that he had offensively, I don't know how he's going to be better. And bringing in Cam Johnson doesn't all of a sudden open up a lot more for Christian Braun on the offensive end. But the jump that Christian Braun made defensively last year is something to look at and say, is there another little bit that he can go? Because you look around the Western Conference, the Timberwolves have at least 2+ defenders. The Rockets have at least 2. Oklahoma City has like 5. We know the Nuggets have Aaron Gordon. Can Christian Braun take a little bit of a step forward this year? on the defensive end, and along with Aaron Gordon, be 2+ defenders to go up against these teams with a lot of firepower, like Oklahoma City, like a Boston when they get healthy. Houston's on the come up, obviously, with now they have Kevin Durant and also with the Amen Thompson and Alperen Şengün. So from an offensive standpoint, I don't know how Christian Braun gets a lot better than he was last year. But in going back to that conversation, when the Nuggets decided to let Kentavious Caldwell-Pope go, one thing that Christian Braun still is not is the level of defender that KCP was when the Denver Nuggets won the title. Now, this year, he's not getting paid his extension. So that's worth noting when we observe Christian Braun. He's not getting the big bucks yet. But moving forward, can he be? Because that's what it always was. Sure, Christian Braun can fill the void offensively. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope left. But defensively, could he? And as much as he was improved last year, I still don't think he's at that level. Can he get there? That's what I'm looking out for starting on Thursday when the Nuggets season begins. But you look at the numbers that the Nuggets are giving to Christian Braun. Yes, it's the same thought process. You know, the starting five that they have, they feel really good about. They want to keep it together. But it's a much lower dollar figure than they had to pay Michael Porter. And given the other end of the floor that Christian Braun does help, I think there's a chance that we're not. Even though it's just the NBA world, there will be tough decisions. There will be guys that contribute to the Denver Nuggets that the Nuggets will have to let walk out. That's what we have learned. In the new world order of the NBA, that's going to happen. But this doesn't feel like a gross overpay of Christian Braun. And I think that he can do even more to make it, in retrospect, not look like a gross overpay like Michael Porter's contract looked if he continues to improve on the defensive end, because it's something that the Denver Nuggets need. When they have their best lineup out there, Aaron Gordon could use some help on the defensive end of the floor. So Christian Braun signing 5 years, $125 million, essentially the same deal that Dyson Daniels got from the Atlanta Hawks, but there's an easy comparison. Dyson Daniels is one of the best defensive players in the league. If Christian Braun can get in that vicinity, then this will look like an even better deal. But it's 2 years. 2 years until things get, and I know Bruce Brown has a special place in the hearts of Nuggets fans, but in terms of the real consequential players on this team, Cam Johnson, Jonas Valanciunas, this should not impact them for the next couple of years, and then we're going to have to do this whole dance over again. Who are the Denver Nuggets going to lose? But this year, next year, for the most part, this is who the Denver Nuggets are, even with signing Christian Braun to this 5-year, $125 million contract. Take your thoughts on that. Nuggets tip off the season Thursday in San Francisco against the Golden State Warriors. And it will truly be the best time of the year with the NFL, NHL, NBA, college football, all of this stuff going on at the same time. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, your thoughts on the Broncos comeback, or was it a Giants collapse? One more reminder, that national keyword for the 5K a day, and you're going to want to text that in sooner rather than later, like much sooner, because we got another national keyword coming your way next hour, but it is CENT, C-E-N-T. Text that to 95819 for your chance to win $1,000 with the 5K a day. Did the Broncos win that game yesterday, or did the Giants lose it? Tom, first one in, says it's so hard for you to give the Broncos credit for anything. It's almost comical most Mondays. They are winning close games, which has been an Achilles heel. They have to make plays to win. Yes, not close to perfect, but some credit has to be given. Now, I'm noticing the timestamp on the text, and I think you texted me that before. I did give the Broncos credit to say they used to be the team that would make the mistakes, whether it be coaching or quarterbacking, that the Giants made yesterday. And the Broncos are improving. That was who they were 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. You lose track. The Indy game, the Chargers game, they were the team making those mistakes. They're not now. That is the credit that they rightly deserve, and I gave it to them. But not close to perfect. The offense was comatose for 3 quarters, Tom. They did nothing for 3 quarters. And I'm supposed to get on the microphone and bow down to the Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos? Come on, you watched that game just like I did. That was a Giants collapse. And for the last few weeks, the shoe has been on the other foot. That the Denver Broncos in the fourth quarter, for whatever reason, are now locked in at a level they had not been at even the entirety of this season. Right? And they deserve credit for that. I am giving the credit where credit is deserved. But you look at, let's take the play where the Broncos end up getting into field goal range. Not the Sutton, not the one that Sutton caught, the one that was intended for Sutton that accidentally ended up in the hands of Marvin Mims. You want me to give credit for that? Cortland Sutton was the intended receiver. Bo Nix missed that throw. It just so happened that Marvin Mims was sitting right there. Not close to perfect. I'm not judging this team on a scale of 0 to perfect. I just think that in order for the Broncos to get a little bit more credit for what happened yesterday, they would have to have a pulse for the first 3 quarters. Just a pulse. They didn't have it for 3 quarters. The Giants missed 2 extra points. Jackson Dart threw an interception. And their defensive coordinator, whose head is being called for today in New York, had the absolute worst possible game plan for the Broncos' final drive. But again, why did the Broncos not have a pulse for 3 quarters? Because of a lot of things that's on them. Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper being so amped up to back up their trash talk when they just shouldn't have said anything about Jackson Dart. And they're so amped up to back up their trash talk that they're trying to jump the snap count and getting whistled for offside. More pre-snap movement on the offensive side. Sean Payton with these hockey line changes. Jared Bednar's watching these games and going like, that's too many guys to throw out there in the middle of a play, Sean. And as far as like this every Monday thing, clearly you didn't hear me after the Eagles game because I was effusive in my praise for the Denver Broncos for beating Philadelphia. I'm watching the game and giving my honest opinion on the game. It's funny that, the Broncos, I'm critical of the Denver Broncos, and I can't find a way to say anything nice about them. But, if I'm critical of the Rockies, it's okay. It's all in perception. If you think that the Broncos are actually an elite football team, then yeah, a lot of the stuff I'm saying is going to make it seem like I'm hating on them. No, I'm correctly evaluating where they are at this point in the season. The credit to them is that despite the many mistakes they had through the first 3 quarters, just like in the Philadelphia game, they locked in, and it was the other team making those mistakes. But teams don't win games down 19-0 going into the fourth quarter. Teams lose games up 19-0. I'm sorry, that's a Giants loss, not a Broncos win. But you know what? It counts as a win all the same. And the storyline for the Dallas game is some of that stuff that plagued you in the first 3 quarters can't happen against Dallas. In fact, here was Sean Payton again doing the research and being a little bit worried about what's coming up on Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys.
Now the challenge is, you ready? Teams record the following week. Look it up analytically. It's like 2-17. So we've got to be able to deal with that challenge. The following week, when you steal a win, is a challenging week. So we've got to be prepared to bury this and get ready. And listen, the reason I know that is it happened to us when we beat Washington, and the analysts came to me with the numbers.
If you listen to Sean Payne after yesterday's game and then listen to my opening monologue, you'll find some similarities. The tone that I have about this game is the exact same tone Sean Payton does. And you know that I don't agree with Sean Payton on everything. But I'm being a hater and not giving the Broncos any credit, and yet you could turn on the post-game press conference of Sean Payton and it have the exact same tone that I took in the first segment. Other reaction from the 719, I threw out the idea it feels a little Tebow-timey right now with the Denver Broncos. Like a comeback like yesterday, it defies logic, which was the staple of the Tebow-led Broncos. The way they were able to win football games defied logic. They had an elite defense too. But for 3 quarters, this team, the offense was flatlined, and then all of a sudden they are moving the ball up and down the field in the fourth quarter. It feels a little Tebow-timey. This from the 719. If you mean they keep winning with not a very good QB, then yes, I am definitely getting Tebow vibes. I'll get into that coming up after the top of the hour. Because I think you're a little harsh in saying Bo Nix is not a good quarterback. But I think you're really onto something. It's what I want to talk about after the top of the hour. This from the 719 as well. Bo Nix is the Jekyll and Hyde of quarterbacks. First 3 quarters, he looked lost and nervous, but he got one bounce and the whole thing flipped. And look, so I could carve out a little space for more credit to the Denver Broncos, because clearly I don't give them enough. Not every quarterback in the league would be able to do what Bo Nix did yesterday. Okay, but in order to win at the highest level in this league, you got to do some of that for 4 quarters. You don't have to do all 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns every quarter. You got to spread it. We're talking about going up against, the the elite teams in this league, the teams you have to get through to get to the Super Bowl, Bo Nix can't just come alive in the fourth quarter. As fun as that was, he's going to have to be good from the opening kick of the first quarter in order to win these games. And Bo Nix, to the texter's point, did nothing through the first three quarters. You can't do that because a team that's better than the Giants, and let's be fair, most of the NFL is better than the New York Giants, the Broncos will get buried. Sean Payton knows that. Bo Nix knows that. You know that, and I know that. You want to give them credit for the fourth quarter, give them credit for the fourth quarter. But Sean Payton is holding them to a higher standard, and I am as well. And that's not good enough to beat the majority of teams in the NFL because the majority of teams are still better than this Giants team. This from Tom, who's in first place in the AFC West. That would be the Denver Broncos. Best start since 2016 and 5-2. I don't think they're an elite team, but you talk about them like they are trash. You know, I'm not a Broncos fan, but I always feel like I have to defend them. Well, don't feel like you have to. I mean, I don't want to make you feel obligated. Please say what is in your heart. But yeah, Broncos are in first place. And they're not trash. They have the best defense in the NFL. They have a good quarterback in Bo Nix. They have a good receiver, solid offensive line, good coach in Sean Payton. They're not trash. But I have to call it like I see it. That's what I'm up here to do. Now, continue to take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. I want to get into the Tebow-esque performance from Bo Nix. And there will be something that reminds you of Tim Tebow in the next segment. But this has to do with something that Sean Payton is not letting Bo Nix do until is absolutely necessary, and that needs to change moving forward. Welcome in hour 2 on this Monday. We got a Monday Night Football doubleheader for you. First, it will be the more compelling of the two games, if I'm being honest about it, Bucs and Lions, and then it will be the Seahawks and the Texans, if you still crave some football around 8 o'clock this evening. And let's be honest, who doesn't? But very interested in the first of those two games. Two teams that are certainly considered among the favorites to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Baker, Goff. It's an interesting matchup for sure. And that will start right at 5 o'clock right here on Extra Sports 1300. In the meantime, we're talking Broncos and their improbable win over the New York Giants. 33-32. And I said on the show last week, and I'm sure I was taken as I was sliding Bo Nix, I said that Sean Payton is coaching Bo Nix in a way, in the way he's coaching him is because at this point, he knows what he has in Bo Nix. So not letting him, air it out, sling it all around the yard. And you saw for 3 quarters, even when Sean Payton allowed him a little bit to throw the football, what happened. I mean, he was mediocre through 3 quarters. But that's as a passer. Sean Payton is coaching Bo Nix the right way as a passer. At some point, he's got to let Bo Nix run. And I understand Sean Payton's side of this, right? Great quarterbacks in the NFL win from the pocket, right? He had a quarterback in Drew Brees that did that. And if he sees some comparisons to Drew Brees in Bo Nix, he probably wants Bo Nix to play the same way. But Bo Nix as a passer, that's a quarterback you can win with, not necessarily one you can win because of. Bo Nix running the football, that's a quarterback that you can win games because of. And I get it. You can't do it all the time, right? He's not Justin Fields. He's not, Tim Tebow. There has to be winning from the pocket as a part of this. And the practical reason for keeping him from running it with injuries and everything, I get that. But something that Bo Nix said yesterday after the game just kind of, it really speaks to the point I'm trying to make. Here's Bo Nix.
I don't even know how he scored 33 points in a quarter. That's kind of insane, but it's just whatever we had to get done. We did it, and it was a full team effort, just play after play by guys. Now, you want to see it done earlier, but however, whatever it takes, by any means necessary.
By any means necessary. When the Broncos were down 19-0, whatever Sean Payton envisions for Bo Nix, whatever he hopes Bo Nix is, all of that kind of stuff goes out the window, and it becomes, we can't lose this football game. Think about what the Broncos have been building towards over the last few weeks, highlighted by the Eagles win, and what they are capable of doing when you look at this schedule over the next few weeks. They could not have afforded to lose that football game. So I think there was a little bit of Sean Payton throwing the best case scenario, the way he'd like it to be, out the window. And he just said, I got to lean into what's going to work. And part of what works is Bo Nix running the football. He became the first quarterback in NFL history to both throw and run for 2 touchdowns in the same quarter. It's never happened. And you see when Bo Nix runs the ball. Like the three of the biggest plays in that game were Bo Nix using his legs. You had the 2 touchdown runs, but even before that first touchdown run that Bo Nix had, you had him on the 4th and 3 run for 21 yards, and you see what that does for the team. It sparks them. You know, Broncos fans were booing the Denver Broncos for 3 quarters. Bo Nix running the football electrifies the crowd, amps up the team, and I think it gets Bo Nix going. We talk about Bo Nix and how much he desperately needs a rhythm. I think running the football helps him with that rhythm because it's just stacking plays, right? Whether it's throwing the football or running the football, if you're making plays, you gain confidence, you start to get on a roll, get that momentum, that rhythm going. I think running the football can help. And you hear it from teams every week. And like, I laugh sometimes when I listen to opposing teams because they talk about Bo Nix's ability to use his legs. And I'm like, Sean Payton doesn't want him to. So the one thing that all of these coaches point out on a week-to-week basis about where Bo Nix is dangerous, the one guy that seemingly does not want to employ that is Sean Payton. I just think it has to be a part of the game plan. Because Bo Nix without that, you got to have a lot of other things go right with this football team on a week-to-week basis to win football games. But if you can, and I'm not asking for him to run the ball 10 times. He ran the ball 5 times. But it has to be a part of the plan. It can't just all be improvisational. Because when he runs it, it isn't Joe Flacco on Thursday night where it catches everybody by surprise. Bo Nix can beat defenders with his legs. This isn't the element of surprise. This is utilizing the strengths of your personnel. And I just think Sean Payton has this, and we talked about last week, he's just like micromanaging the Broncos through this season. And it's about what the numbers tell you from years past about, you know, them not wanting the bye week. And Sean Payton even last night brought up that the record after winning a game like this is really bad for that team. Like he's already on to what do the numbers tell me? What does history tell me? He's like just trying to control every little thing. And look, overall, it's worked. The team's 5-2 off to their best start since 2016. I'm not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. But I think there's a rigidity to the way that Sean Payton is coaching Bo Nix that I don't know is actually bringing out the best in Bo Nix. And I just think there comes a point every week in every game where you just have to go with, what does my guy do the best? Maybe I let him do that. And maybe there are benefits that come from that. And you saw with the Broncos backs up against the wall yesterday, Sean Payton just throw out all of these, you know, whatever he wants Bo Nix to be and just said, I'm going to let Bo Nix be Bo Nix. I'm going to call running plays for him. And they worked. And there is a balance here. And you don't want your supposed franchise quarterback to get hurt. But at the same time, There's a reason why Jared Stidham is one of the most handsomely compensated backups in the National Football League. You took out this very expensive insurance policy on Bo Nix. Nobody, it would be a disaster, obviously, if Bo Nix were to rip an ACL. I get that. But there's a middle ground here. And it just seems like so much with Bo Nix, there's no middle ground. It's what Sean Payton wants him to be. And the best coaches are able to identify what their players are best at and saying, I'm going to lean into that. It may not be and Sean Payton has said it before. He didn't even know Bo Nix could run like this. So this is a revelation to Sean Payton, which probably throws a wrench in what he projected Bo Nix to be. But what's the difference between the Broncos offense in the first 3 quarters yesterday and the fourth quarter? It's Bo Nix's legs. He still missed on deep throws in the fourth quarter. Pocket passer Bo Nix missed on the deep throws, was inaccurate, could not move the football. The Broncos offense stagnated. Jeremy Crawshaw was the most important player on the field for 3 quarters yesterday. And then when Sean Payton had no other choice but to let Bo Nix run, all of a sudden everything opens up. Nobody's saying this has to be the second coming of Michael Vick here. But it has to be more a part of the game plan moving forward than it is. Because if we're talking about what the Broncos are plus, if they could be a little bit more, and you look around and say, what's that? Well, maybe getting Dre Greenlaw back can be the plus for the defense. I didn't expect a ton out of Dre Greenlaw. He popped up a couple of times. That's a longer-term story. I'm not going to sit here and expect Dre Greenlaw to absolutely wreck the game. But that's that added level that the Broncos defense, as great as they are, can go to if they have Dre Greenlaw in the middle of the field. You look at the offense, what does that look like for them? It's Bo Nix when he can utilize his legs. Not just to move around in the pocket, which I would argue actually leads to less success for the Denver Broncos, because you know that Bo Nix has some problems when he's moving in the pocket and being able to set himself and deliver the ball downfield. I know there was a saying about Bo Nix's predecessor about letting him do something. I don't want to say that. Let Bo Nix run. Don't be afraid of it. It is something that you didn't even plan for. And yet it's been this nice gift that you've received, that even in your advanced scouting and as closely as George Payton and Sean Payton looked at Bo Nix, they completely missed this part of his game. In some way, it's found money. What do you do with found money? You let it ride. And I think that the Broncos have to do it. Responsibly, of course. But if there's going to be a little bit more to this offense in 2025, it's not some giant quantum leap. Like, how many weeks are we going to go by trying to wonder when Evan Ingram is going to break out before we just go, yeah, it's not going to happen? Right? Their personnel is their personnel. Except when Sean Payton allows Bo Nix to run the football. Design plays for him. Those off-script, improvisational runs are the ones that I feel like get quarterbacks hurt. Plan something, make the line like that play where everybody moved to the right except for the left tackle and Bo Nix. Like, script things. That's the way you handle this responsibly. That's the way you cut down on the risk of Bo Nix getting hurt. But I don't see Bo Nix, the pocket passer, being much better than this. But Bo Nix, the dual threat QB, if I may be so bold, that's intriguing. That gives another level to this offense that maybe allows them to be at a different level when we rack and stack teams in not just the AFC, but throughout the NFL. Do you think that Sean Payton needs to let Bo run more? 719-24-7, 1313, more Drive Time Sports after this. The latest national keyword for the 5K a day is roll, R-O-L-L. If you text that to 95819, you'll be entered to win $1,000 because we're giving away $1,000 5 times a day, Monday through Friday. So be listening all day for your chance to win with the 5K a day. The number to text, 95819. The word to text, roll, R-O-L-L. Let's get into more of your thoughts on Sunday's improbable win for the Denver Broncos. Sean Martinez checking in on the Instagram broadcast saying it's terrible that Knicks had 50 passing attempts for a team that is supposed to be a running team. And it's not just Bo Nix running the ball that needed to happen more. It's the running of the football from J.K. Dobbins. Right? I think that's also one of the signs that the Broncos were kind of starting to get it going was J.K. Dobbins starting to run the football as well. Let's not forget the identity that Sean Payton wants this team to have. It's running the football. And I don't know if he stuck to it as much as he should have yesterday. Yeah, Bo Nix shouldn't be throwing the ball 50 times. This from the 719. Hey, Ryan, on a flight yesterday back from San Diego, Broncos are down 26. I text people, I said, fire Peyton, cut Nick, and sell the Broncos when we landed. I look like I ate a lot of crow. Go Broncos. It was wild. And it was fun. It was fun yesterday. But as Sean Payne talked about it after the game, like you'll get those. You'll get those games and you just hope that you're on the winning end and you learn from it. And that was Sean Payton's big message after the game.
And it's important we don't let the euphoria of a win like that cloud the things that need to get cleaned up tomorrow. So they'll enjoy it tonight, but there are a lot of things that we're still doing, particularly offensively, that trouble me, and we'll get it fixed. We have to get it fixed.
And you'd rather be doing that after a win than after a loss. But Sean Payton wasn't pleased with the way that his team played, but I'm supposed to throw on the blue and orange pom-poms. This from the 719. I agree with you. They need to embrace it letting Bo Nix run. Let him be a mobile quarterback. We see the results and what happens when they let him go. And then defenses would have to prepare differently for him. We wouldn't want to be so one-dimensional. Yeah, and look at Josh Allen. Like, we got to the point where we said, man, they can't have Josh Allen running it this much. Now, Bo Nix is not Josh Allen, right? But the same thought applies. Nobody is asking Bo Nix to run the ball 20 times. That's what, to Sean's point, is what you have J.K. Dobbins for. That's why you have R.J. Harvey. You're supposed to be able to run the football in a more traditional way. But some controlled, designed runs can make this offense more dynamic than it appears to be able to be with just Bo Nix dropping back and throwing the football. Right? Sean Payton tries. I mean, one thing that you can't say about Sean Payton is it's not like he doesn't dial up the deep ball. He tries. And more often than not, you saw the numbers that CBS flashed on the TV. His numbers on deep passes are just, they're not good. So Sean Payton tries to make this offense more dynamic, but the more and more he tries to do that by letting Bo Nix throw the ball down the field, the more it just shows that he doesn't have that ability right now. But he does have the ability to run. Let him use it. It's about winning the game, right? That's what it comes down to. And look, if you can get through a game, if you can get through a game with Bo Nix just dropping back 25 times and throwing the ball around and hardly running it and win the game, then great. Awesome. But against the New York Giants, couldn't do that. It wasn't even 25. It was double that. And they still couldn't get the pass game going. I just think Sean Payton's being very rigid in all of this. And I think he needs to meet Bo a little. And we had this conversation about, Bo Nix kind of gripping and being very hard on himself and everything like that in the discussion of, Sean Payton's got to, let Bo Nix feel good about himself. And I think the way that he wants to do it is allow Bo Nix to throw the ball downfield. But if he keeps missing on these deep passes, it's like, how much longer can you expect Sean Payton to go along with that? When, surprisingly, the Giants keep putting points on the board. I think Sean Payton stuck with it too long. But here's another way. Let him run the ball. Tucker says, by all means, the Broncos had a tremendous comeback victory, but remember they were playing the Giants. The Broncos out of division schedule is weak. So wait and see. It's not about the start, but all about where you finish. Now, this is where, and everybody listen up, the texter that's telling me to get the hell out of Broncos country, and Tom, who's much nicer than that, but still challenging me, which I appreciate. The Broncos, not to this degree, but did something similar to this to a Philadelphia team that I have a lot more respect for than the New York Giants. So, to be fair to the Denver Broncos, they did something similar a few weeks ago against the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the best teams in the NFL, the reigning Super Bowl champions. So this is a little bit in their DNA. Now, maybe it's not in their DNA because that's ingrained, but they're showing this a little bit more. A couple weeks before that, they were the team making an ungodly amount of mistakes to help them lose games against the Chargers and the Colts. So, yeah, taking that game in a vacuum, yes, the Giants lost, and yes, I don't know how much praise you want to give the Denver Broncos, given the way that game went. But to be fair, and I was very complimentary of the Denver Broncos a few weeks ago when they beat the Philadelphia Eagles. But the message from Sean Payton, can't keep doing it. Got to show up the first three quarters if you're going to be one of the best teams in the NFL. This is breaking news from Adam Schefter. Dre Greenlaw just came back from injury, and now he's being suspended a game for unsportsmanlike conduct. They're showing video on Monday Night Countdown right now that shows Dre Greenlaw after the Broncos walked it off against the Giants, Greenlaw going after the referee. So one game back for Dre Greenlaw, and now he's going to miss the Cowboys game, or I don't know how the appeal process works. Maybe he can appeal and miss the Houston game. you cannot do what Dre Greenlaw did. And if you see the video, you can't chase after a referee like that. I mean, Sean Payton getting onto the field after the pass interference call was made against Riley Moss is inexcusable, and Sean Payton owned up to that. What Dre Greenlaw did is worse. You can't go after an official like that. Now, if this has to do with the Riley Moss pass interference, which I said earlier was not pass interference, I thought that was a good bit of defending from Riley Moss, a player that I have been pretty critical of. Riley Moss did nothing to earn a penalty flag there, and I understood the emotion of Sean Payton going down there. He shouldn't have gone out on the field, but I understood the emotion behind it. I can understand Dre Greenlaw's frustration because that nearly cost them the game. A game that they had no business winning was almost taken from them. Right? Because if Riley Moss is called for the pass interference, which he was, Jackson Dart scores the touchdown. Giants make the extra point, the Broncos lose. Right? Because now you have to go all the way down the field and score a touchdown. And I don't know, maybe you believe the Broncos could have done that. The odds were much better that they would be able to get into field goal range. So I understand the emotion of Dre Greenlaw, but there's a line that you cannot cross, and you can't be running at an official. It's a 250-pound guy chiseled out of granite running full speed at a normal-sized human being, irate. You can't have that. And I don't want to say credit to Dre Greenlaw, but at least it didn't get really ugly. So Dre Greenlaw will be suspended for one game for doing that. If this is about the Riley Moss PI, I understand the frustration. But still can't do it. And I got to imagine when Sean Payton gets to the podium next, it'll be one of two things. Either he'll refuse to answer a question about Dre Greenlaw, or he will say it can't happen. He's not going to defend Dre Greenlaw because you can't. 719-247-1313. Get one more text in from Ryan before we take a break. I don't know what is more shocking in the AFC West, the Broncos' fourth quarter or the Raiders' defense. Yeah, I don't. What happens more? A team rallying from essentially 3 touchdowns down in the fourth quarter, or a team winning 31-0? Which is, I got to imagine the 31-0 probably happens more, but it doesn't happen a lot. That was a shocking result. The Chiefs winning by that much. But I think since you brought it up, Ryan, I think there needs to be a calibration here. What the Kansas City Chiefs did against the Detroit Lions, I think, is more representative of how they are going to win games. Right? Because they aired it out and looked like the Chiefs with Tyreek Hill against the Ravens. Well, we know what the Ravens defense is. They looked at against the Raiders. We know what the Raiders are, even though 31-0, that's a shocking result. But what the Chiefs did against Detroit, even with Rashee Rice being back with the team, I think that's how you call it nickel. I think Matt Sims was on the show last week. He called it nickel and diming. Like, they're going to have to get little chunks. They're not going to be able to go over the top. They're not going to be able to, 3 plays and they're in the end zone against good teams. Just not. But you're seeing when this Kansas City team is able to go up against bad football teams, that they're capable of some pretty eye-popping numbers. But unfortunately for them, the teams they'll meet in the playoffs definitely won't be the Raiders and may not be the Baltimore Ravens either. 719-247-1313. Get to the news out of Fort Collins yesterday as it pertains to their head coach and now former head coach, Jay Norvell. The national keyword for the 5K a day is roll, ROLL. Text that to 95819. That doesn't come to this text line that you interact with me on a daily basis through. You got to text it to 95819, and that national keyword may win you $1,000 with the 5K a day. The breaking news of the afternoon, well, a couple of them. Earlier today, Christian Braun inking a 5-year, $125 million extension with the Denver Nuggets. I think it's a more reasonable number than they initially gave to Michael Porter all those years ago. In fact, when rumors started swirling about what Christian Braun would command, $25 million a year on average was the low end. So perhaps Christian Braun left some money on the table. I guess my guess it would be more the Nuggets saying like, hey, if you ask for more, like we're not going to sign you because we just got this flexibility with this incredibly punitive cap system. We're not going to pay you 30, right? They gave Michael Porter 30. They're not going to give Christian Braun 30, and he's not even going to get to 25 that he's going to average over the course of the extension for a couple years. So this is a tidier bit of business. It doesn't look like as much of an overpay as Michael Porter was at the time. But the reality, the bill is going to come due all the same here in a couple of years. Like if you grow to really like this year's version of the Denver Nuggets, you're going to have to deal with them losing some of these guys. Even though it's not as much money as they gave Michael Porter, even if you think that Christian Braun is more important to the Denver Nuggets than Michael Porter is or was, it's still the same idea here. Christian Braun is a key piece of our core. And guys, certainly anybody on the bench, and maybe even Cam Johnson may prove in the next couple of years to not be considered an actual part of the core. And they're going to be unwilling or unable to retain some of these players because of this deal. That reality is still going to come to fruition. But at the outset, it looks better than the contract they gave Michael Porter. And you can make an argument with the improvements that Christian Braun made that he is more deserving of being considered part of the core than maybe Michael Porter. I would still like to see Christian Braun take another step defensively to truly be worth being considered part of the core. Offensively, I'm good with where Christian Braun is. I'm fine. But defensively, a little bit more where I want to see this year and beyond. Also on the Broncos front, Dre Greenlaw suspended for a game after the Broncos walked it off yesterday against the Giants. He chased after an official. My guess would be because of the Riley Moss call that very nearly could have cost the Denver Broncos the football game. Dart gets in to score a touchdown. Thankfully for the Broncos, the Giants miss an extra point. And the Broncos are able to go down and kick a field goal. Can't do it. Can't go after an official. So he will, looks like he'll miss the Dallas game on Sunday. And they just got him back. And then there's this bit of breaking news it's not breaking anymore. It's been more than 24 hours. But this over the weekend with Jay Norvell relieved of his duties as head coach of CSU. And I think the writing was on the wall that he was not going to make it into the Pac-12. I think there was enough there to say that it was going to be a parting of the ways, that a contract extension would not have been given to Jay Norvell after this season was over, even if he would have beaten Wyoming, which I think is entirely possible. But the why now is because you got embarrassed at home by Hawaii. No disrespect to Hawaii, but if it's not UNLV or Boise State or maybe Wyoming or CA, like there's a small number of teams that you could be embarrassed on your home field with everything that was going on with CSU and Jay Norvell not lose his job. As good as Hawaii might be, Hawaii's not one of those teams. It was a 31-13, and the folks up there in Fort Collins said, enough is enough. And look, it didn't turn out that Jay Norvell was the right guy. I can't for the life of me figure out why he wasn't. I really can't. On paper, this made all the sense in the world. 4 of 5 seasons, his last 5 seasons in Reno, he had a winning record. He led one of the conference's most dynamic offenses, Carson Strong was back-to-back Mount West Offensive Player of the Year. With more resources, with a better spot to recruit to, with all due respect to Reno, Fort Collins is better. It is. With all of these additional things that Jay Norvell got, you would think he's one of those guys that you project, hey, if we give him more resources, if he has a better place to recruit to, then we can extrapolate what he did in Nevada and expect greater things at Fort Collins. I don't know why it didn't work. I see some things along the way. I think he was too beholden to Braden Fowler Nicolosi that maybe either led CSU to not try as hard as they could to go find a replacement in the transfer portal. Maybe they didn't want to look for someone like that. He didn't consistently beat Air Force in Wyoming. Just got around to doing that. And I think him beating Wyoming last year may have clouded judgment of some people, or maybe made people think, okay, maybe he's figured it out now. Clearly he hadn't. I think CSU did the right thing. I think they hired the right guy. It just didn't work. But the worst thing you can do, even if you make the right decision, if it's not panning out, the worst thing you can do is double down on it. And I think perhaps because Jay Norvell beat Wyoming last year, CSU decided to give it another shot, when in all honesty, maybe the argument would have been, should just let him go after last year, especially now given what you've seen. We'll see where they go from here. I find this way that all the schools that are in the new Pac-12 and the Pac-12 itself, I feel like they're looking at themselves in not the same way that everyone else is looking for them. I don't think that this is a power conference that will start playing next year. I don't think that this will be a conference that all the best young coaches in college football will flock to. We could debate whether the Mount West or the Pac-12 is better. The fact of the matter is they're about at the same level. So I don't know that CSU is going to be able to just sit back and, I don't know if James Franklin is walking through those doors up there at Canvas Stadium. I think that the Pac-12 conference and the schools that are joining the Pac-12 have a little bit too high of an opinion of themselves. And I think it might kind of manifest itself in this coaching search. I don't know that CSU can go headhunting. I think they're going to have to look young up-and-comers, coordinators. I know what happened with Mike Bobo, but do you look to the SEC or the Big Ten and try to grab a coordinator? I've seen some names thrown out already. I don't think they're going to have their pick. I don't think this CSU program is that. But it was clear that despite Jay Norvell checking a lot of boxes prior to coming to Fort Collins, he didn't check any of those boxes till it was too late in Fort Collins. And now all CSU and their brain trust can do is just try to make the best decision again and see if it works out better. But the writing was already on the wall. Jay Norvell was not going to accompany the Rams to the Pac-12. But when you lose as badly as they did on their home field on Saturday, then it's like, okay, we're done here. So the defensive coordinator will take over on an interim basis. And the search, yet again, will begin for the next head coach of the CSU Rams. We'll end it there. Appreciate the interaction. As always, it's a much better show when you are involved, so I appreciate that. And tomorrow, we'll be back to a full 3 hours, really start drilling down into some of the other aspects of the Broncos win yesterday and maybe just a little peek forward for the Dallas game on Sunday. For now, enjoy the end of week 7, a double dip. First, Bucks and Lions to be followed by the Seahawks and Texans right here on Extra Sports 1300.